Hello, future Boilermakers, and welcome to our YouTube live broadcast for the Department of Computer Graphics Technology and the Polytechnic Institute of Purdue University. My name is Ryne Kerchner. I'm the Associate Director of Recruitment for the Polytechnic. First, I want to say congratulations to all of our student viewers for being admitted to one of the majors here in the Polytechnic. We're really excited that you chose us as one of your possible schools to come and study here. And we're glad that you could also join us today for our panel discussion to give you some more insight and information into the CGT department. We have several faculty members and an academic advisor and two of our current students here with us tonight who will serve as our panelists, and we'll have them introduce themselves here in a minute. And we also have several topics and questions that we will ask them, but we also want to know what you want to know. So you can submit some questions via the YouTube chat window by signing into your Google account and then typing them into that chat. Our technical director, John O'Malley, and I will be watching that chat and pulling some of those questions in to directly ask the panelists as well. If we don't get to your question tonight, you can also send us an email to techrecruit@purdue.edu, and we'll respond to that later on. So with that, I'll have our panelists introduce themselves with their name, their position in the college, and for our faculty members, a little bit about the courses that they teach. So we'll start out with Bridget.
Hi, my name is Bridget Schafer. I'm a student ambassador at the Polytechnic Institute, and I'm studying user experience design.
All right, great, thank you. And Colin.
Hi, my name is Colin Gray. I'm an assistant professor in CGT. I also am the program lead for our user experience design major, and I teach our freshman, sophomore, senior, and graduate level studios in UX.
All right, great. And next up, Olivia.
Hi, I'm Olivia Olin. I'm a student ambassador, and I'm a freshman studying visual effects, compositing, and animation.
All right, great, thank you. And Ray.
I'm Ray Hassan, an associate professor of practice in computer graphics technology, and my area of specialization is 3D animation.
All right, excellent, thank you. Next up, Rosemary.
Hi, I'm Rosemary Astheimer, and I'm with the Virtual Product Integration major, and I focus on 3D CAD modeling and how that data can be reused throughout the product lifecycle.
All right, thank you. And next up, TR.
Hi, my name is TR Oneal. I'm an academic advisor in the computer graphics department. I've been with CGT since 2011. I've been in the college since 2004, and I've been at Purdue since 1996, almost 25 years. So happy to be meeting with our next group of freshmen.
All right, seasoned veterans here with us, excellent. And last but not least, Vitria.
Good evening. My name is Vetria Byrd. I am an assistant professor in CGT. I teach data visualization, all of the data visualization courses at the 200 level, which is an introduction to data viz. And then we have a second one in the spring, which is the data visualization 2. I also teach topics in data visualizations, all of those for undergraduates. And I also teach a graduate course, visualization tools and applications.
All right, excellent. Thank you all very much. So we'll kind of start off in the academic side and kind of relate to our faculty members that are with us here tonight. And we have several different majors represented, and this question might have some different answers to it. So in your related degree that you are involved in, how are the courses designed? Lectures, labs, group projects? And we'll start that question with Colin and then kind of move through the rest, and I'll call on everybody as we go through.
So the UX design major is one of the newest that's offered in the Polytechnic, and it was designed from the ground up to be a studio-based program. And so what we mean by studio is that these are project-based courses, they're hands-on learning, and we do those through two different flavors of studios. One are our learning studios, which are cohort-based as students come in and go through the major. And those are spaces for students to practice their skills working on authentic design projects. And then we have a cross-cohort studio called Experience Studio, where students start getting engaged in industry-focused projects their second semester at Purdue, and that means they'll have 5 experiences working for industry clients even before they get to their senior level capstone.
Great, and Colin, we've actually already had a couple of questions related to UX, and maybe they're quick answers, at least for the first one. How many students are typically in a freshman class for UX, and how many are there overall?
Yeah, so our numbers have grown perhaps beyond our wildest ambitions. Our current cohort is 50 students starting as freshmen, and I'm teaching that course this semester. Our total number on campus or virtual, in the pandemic is about 160 students, and that includes undergrads, master's students, and a couple of PhD students. But we are looking at sort of trying to manage the population at around 50 students per cohort from here on out. So that's going to leave us at about up to 200 undergrads on campus moving forward.
Okay, great, thank you. And there's another question about software that we're going to get into after we get through the first part of this question here. So, Ray, for you in animation, how does that look? What is the design? And actually, a follow-up question that we got earlier in an email: how much art is actually taught in the animation program as well?
Okay, the first question was what do the courses look like? How many students? That type of thing. Is that the first question? I'm sorry.
Yeah, that's it.
So in my classes, typically I have, it can be fairly low for the elective type courses, and for the required courses, I end up with about 50 to 60 every semester. However, something to consider is those courses that have like 50, 60 students, they're broken up into multiple sections. So I wouldn't ever have more than 30 students in a classroom at a time. Usually closer to 20 to 25. The classes themselves are not your traditional, like, go attend a lecture and then go do a lab. It's all together. So what you see, you can practice immediately. So the courses are a little bit longer, but it's more of like a workshop type of atmosphere, where you learn something and then you immediately go do something or use that new tool. So the second question was about art. How much art is being taught in CGT? Definitely every course has some artistic element, especially in the animation side of things. But it's not a 100% requirement. We're not technically an art school, so our mission is not necessarily to produce artists. However, we do. A lot of our students have a combination of some art skills, a good knowledge of the pipeline, and some more technical skills. So it's a much more well-rounded program, in my opinion, than just going to an art school. You'll understand the entire pipeline here at Purdue. Is that about?
Yeah, I think that gets to the meat of that question that we received. So thank you, appreciate that.
Sure.
And then we'll turn over to Rosemary for her area with VPI.
Okay, thanks. So in our classes, again, we're focused around building 3D models that not only show the products themselves, but how they're built, how they're made, how they're serviced. And, those are all part of that product life cycle that I mentioned. And that can include simulations, visualizations, and much like the others, we do have a lecture component, although I have mine recorded so that when you come to class, you've already watched that content and we can have a discussion. You're not just sitting there listening to me talk and, not having a chance to really think about it and respond. So I think that better prepares you to have a more meaningful conversation. And again, we use tools that are used in industry. I think a lot of us came from industry. I did. Was 15 years in industry before I came to Purdue. So I like to bring that to my students so they get a realistic experience of what's going to happen when they graduate. So we use the tools that are used by industry professionals, and we take projects to use those tools and apply it into some real world situations.
I think that's great, and we'll actually get into kind of what those tools are here after we talk to Vittoria about her area with data viz. So hold tight on that.
Okay.
Okay, so yes, so DataViz is a combination of lecture and lab. Particularly, it allows students to have a hands-on experience with working with different types of data. So we usually have a lab or a lecture first, and then the lab on the next day during the week. And so students get to work with all different types of data. One day we may work with social media data. The next day we may work with maybe energy type data. I really try to provide a wide spectrum of different types of data. And in particular with COVID-19, this has served to be, or turned out to be a great opportunity to get everyone involved in the data set because everybody is at least familiar with it. And so students have an opportunity to choose their own topic for projects that we work on. There are some individual projects, but then there are also group projects as well. I do not give midterms or finals, but we do have a lot of project-based assignments. At the end of 270, we have what's called a hackathon. And so that gives students an opportunity to work in a collaborative environment, but also give them that experience of participating in an intense but fun type of project where they can use those skill sets that they've learned in class and also apply them elsewhere as well.
All right, excellent. Thank you for that insight on the course design for your different areas. And we'll kind of go back in the same order: Colin, Ray, Rosemary, and Vittoria, just to give us some examples of some of the software or technology. We actually had some good questions about programming. That's the learned programming languages that are learned in the different programs and the different majors as well. So can you kind of just give us some specific examples that are used in the classes, and then how does that relate to industry as well?
Yeah, great. So UX is a little bit of a different beast than some of these areas because it is still a field that is rapidly changing in industry. And so we're trying to prepare students, and this is true for DataViz and other areas too, for sure. But we're less tied to specific tools because those tools are still pretty actively in flux. Out in industry context, students do develop tool knowledge, but it's not something that's directly taught. Students can pick their own tools that they want to become expert at. Most of these tend to be prototyping software, so a lot of students come in and think, I need to be good at Photoshop or Sketch or Figma. Those skills aren't going to hurt them, but they aren't necessary to do good design work either. We can definitely learn those skills on the job and engaging with work. So because user experience design is outcome agnostic, we design the potential for experiences. There are many different kinds of software or technologies that might come into play. So certainly a lot of people think about websites and mobile apps and things like that. And certainly that is some of the work that user experience designers do. But we also engage in some of our studios with physical computing, so engaging with interactions in the physical world, using Arduinos and input-output circuits there, and also dealing with emerging technologies through things like augmented reality, virtual reality, mixed reality, voice user interfaces, and the like. So the world is sort of your palette to sort of play around with in UX, and our goal is to help you understand problems sort of at that level, and then engage with the technologies that you need to actually prototype the potential solutions.
Great, and just to follow up, there's a question about UX and cognitive science that is taught in the major. Can you speak to that real quick?
Yeah, so cognitive science is one of the deep roots of user experience design and human computer interaction from the 1970s. Certainly, HCI and user experience design has been strongly impacted by cognitive science. And so elements of that are taught throughout our program sequence, the studio sequence I mentioned. We also, one of our main selectives areas is also psychology and human behavior. And many of our students do go on to complete a minor in psychology or a minor in anthropology as part of their program study. And it's something that I think is really, really powerful in thinking about how to leverage human behavior and design for it better.
All right, great. And then turn to Ray for his area in animation, and again, kind of the software tools that are used and learned. And we actually had an email question in software engineering. Is that taught as part of the program as well?
Software engineers would typically be more of like a computer science type of major. Not that it's impossible to do. It's just not something that we specifically target. The software that we use in animation is Maya, of course, Autodesk Maya, ZBrush, I mean, if you extend it into games, video effects, compositing, that type of stuff, we're using the Adobe suite. So we've got, you know, After Effects, we've got Photoshop, we've got all that. We've got Houdini, which we'll use for a lot of VFX. We teach Substance for texturing. There's so many of them. So there's a lot of different softwares that we use. I would say primarily it would be Maya if you wanted to get a jump start, you know, before coming. Maya would be the tool to learn. Then as far as programming goes, there's a lot of different kinds of programming that go on in the animation industry, but most of what you really need is Python. That would be my number one choice if I wanted to pick up a programming language before coming. The other one is MEL, which is Maya's embedded language, which is actually, it sounds really horrific, but it's not that hard to learn because Maya will literally teach you. So there's a hybrid language called PyMel. And we're starting to get into the weeds here. That's a little bit more difficult, but it's no C++, right? Python is a relatively much more basic language, and it doesn't have a lot of the formatting issues that new learners would have in like Java or C#. Yeah. That about covers it. Was there anything else to the question?
No, I think that's it. I think that's a good rundown of what we're doing in the program. So thank you. Appreciate that. And then Rosemary, same kind of question for you, software tools, technology that are used in the VPI area.
Yeah, and sorry, my camera went out for a minute there, so hopefully I'm back. So we're designing things, so we're using CAD, computer-aided design software. A lot of students have the opportunity to use some CAD, maybe SolidWorks or Inventor when they're in high school. Again, if you don't have that, that's fine. We'll teach you that. But we use, I call it the big three. So either Creo, CATIA, or NX. Those are kind of the big three in industry. We also do have SolidWorks as well that we teach in some of our classes. And then we will take those models and we will optimize them to make them lightweight so that you don't have extra geometry that you don't need, extra volume. We'll take those same models and use them so that we can generate a program that will run a machine to manufacture it. So that could be a mill, usually like a CNC mill. You can also do things like make the mold for an injection molded plastic part. We'll use software that will also do programs that will automate the inspection. So once you've made that part, how do you know that the part that you designed is the part that was produced? Or how do you know it was within the accuracy that you specified? So we'll do some of that. And another area that's, I think, pretty important is the output, whether it be assembly instructions or, again, inspection instructions. There's all these data packages that need to be put together when you're doing work for a supplier or even for your own purposes. So we'll go through the generation of those types of documents as well.
All right, great. Thank you. And then Vittoria, on to you for the same type of question, please.
So the first thing that I do in the class is to point out that data visualization is a process. And so with that in mind, the goal is to help you understand the data lifecycle and the different transformations that data go through as you work with it. So the very first thing that we work with, believe it or not, is Excel as a tool for preparing the data to be ready to be imported or read into a visualization tool. So we'll, work on things like pivot tables and pivot charts, because at some point you will have a large data set that you will need to be able to navigate through or be able to manipulate and pull information out of. Beyond that, the primary tool that we use in the first data visualization course is Tableau. So I have a series of videos that the students watch. It's really you move at your own pace, kind of at a on-demand type of thing. So you have several of those to complete by the end of the semester, and so we kind of work through those. The purpose of that is so that the class as a whole has a tool that everyone is learning. And so that creates a sense of community among the students who are there. Some students come in having some knowledge of some other data visualization tools, but that is the primary tool just to get you familiar with the process. I also want to focus on not necessarily the tool, but that you understand the data behind it. And so I tell students, you don't need me to teach you how to use a tool. You need me to show you how to learn those skill sets that will enable you to take these transferable skills and apply them elsewhere. So students come in, Tableau is a widely used application in the business world. We also look at different other types of tools depending on the type of data that you have. So there isn't a visualization tool that works for all data. And so what we try to do is to kind of give you an introduction to those different types of tools. I want to echo what Ray said. We touch on a little bit of Python. Because that enables us to do some really cool stuff in the second class for machine learning. And so if you don't know Python, or maybe you're just getting into it, it's what I call a gentle introduction. And so we do, towards the end of the class, we look at processing as a basic programming language. We also get into something called D3, which is data-driven documents, and that allows you to create visualizations and make them accessible via the web. So you can make static visualizations, or you can make interactive visualizations, which is another stage of the data visualization process. So we look at a lot of different tools depending on the type of data that you have.
All right, very good. Thank you. And I'm gonna turn it over to our students who've heard a lot about what goes on in the classes, what's taught, but want to hear their experience and what it's like to actually take the classes and do work on those projects. So Olivia, we'll start with you, since you're in a major that we haven't heard a lot about yet, visual effects compositing. Just give us a little rundown of what you've done so far, and kind of maybe an example or two of some projects that you've worked on as well.
So yeah, I'm a freshman, so a lot of my classes have been a lot of like basic information and kind of creating a strong foundation to go to higher level classes. So one of my classes was Intro to Modeling, and I just learned the basics of Maya, which I had no experience coming into anything. So just learning kind of the ins and outs of it, basic stuff to kind of get you to a higher level. Another class I took was Internet Foundations, which kind of teaches you to create a website, which I had a lot of fun with. The final project I had a lot of fun with, because they basically just gave you some guidelines and you kind of ran wild with it. So I was able to create like a website for my family recipes. So that was just something that I was interested in. And then a class that I'm in right now is digital images, and there's some really fun projects in there. Again, there's just kind of basic guidelines and you can run with it. One of my favorites is we created a movie poster with Photoshop. So I just kind of got to create like my dream movie, which was really fun. Yeah, I don't really know what else to say.
Well, now I got to know, what was your dream movie? What did that poster look like?
I'm a huge Legend of Zelda fan, so I made a poster for Legend of Zelda.
That's awesome. I'm with you on that. Very cool. All right, and then Bridget, you're in the UX major. We've heard a lot about that from Colin. Could you give us a little more insight of the projects you've worked on? And we actually had a question if there are some semester-long projects that students in the major work on as well.
Yeah, so to answer the second question first, the semester-long projects are typically reserved for our Experience Studio, which, as Dr. Gray was saying, is students working with companies to kind of do intern-like work, not technically intern work, but to do a project for them that does take the entirety of the semester. That could be improving the user experience of a website or a specific application, or doing a kind of explorative project where the company will say, here's a general problem we're experiencing, we'd like you to explore solutions or maybe do some research for us. So, and then in terms of the first question, there has been a lot of, as Dr. Gray was saying, lots of opportunity to explore a diverse set of tools. There's a lot of interactive prototyping tools like Figma, Whimsical, Marvel, UXPin, in which we've been able to do a lot of prototyping, things like user testing, all of that kind of fun stuff. Like you were saying, Arduino. I just did a project where I made a security alarm system for a cookie jar that would send me a text message every time one of my roommates got into my cookie jar. And it'd say, intruder alert, intruder alert. Lots of fun opportunities for us to use tools to kind of visualize a holistic experience, or ask really specific nitty-gritty questions. And it's all theory-based. I'm so sorry, my Alexa is going off. But it's all reinforced by theory. So we are using a whole lot of tools, but they are not they're not necessarily, what UX design is all about. They're all tools. They're all methods for us to ask questions and answer questions and things like that. But I hope that answered your question.
Yeah, definitely. I appreciate that. It's some good info, and maybe something you can do is make sure Alexa doesn't turn on in the middle of a session in the future. I'm just joking. Anyway, I do want to point out we do have what's called the Techies Today podcast. So it's our Polytechnic podcast that is out there at polytechnic.purdue.edu/podcast. And we actually just have a recent episode, or our most recent episode actually features 2 interviews with a UX graduate. One of the interviews was when she was a student, and then one is more recent and she's out in industry right now. So if you want to check that out and get a little more insight into the student experience there, and then what she's doing now, I think that'd be a good opportunity for you all as well. All right, I'm going to kind of shift our gears here and turn it over to TR, our academic advisor, because we had a decent number of questions about other opportunities and other courses that students can take, or double major and things along those lines. So I know one question we get is when will I know who my advisor is? And I think that will start with the virtual start process. Could you just give us a rundown of what that looks like, and then we'll kind of get into some other questions as well.
Certainly. So first off, you accept your admissions to Purdue, and then that opens up a wide range of opportunities for you in the My Purdue portal on the new student page. One of which is which will be in later this summer. You'll complete an online process called Virtual STAR, which is Virtual Student Transition Advising and Registration. That's what VSTAR stands for. And so you'll participate in that. There's a series of videos and PowerPoints that you'll participate. There's some questions. There's some learning modules that you have to do to be prepared to be a Purdue student, so that you're being a good citizen of our university. And so that's part of the new student tab. Once you complete your virtual start in Brightspace, that's our learning module that the university uses. It's a online course system. Once students complete that information in Brightspace, then that triggers a notification to the university that you're ready. And so then we will put you in an opportunity to pick a day that you want to meet with advisors. And so we will begin our registration appointments on June 1st, and probably no sooner than that. So that's a college decision. Some of your friends who are going to Purdue might have their VSTAR meeting with their advisors sooner, but we will wait until June 1st. And then you will be assigned an advisor sometime close to June 1st. And so and that is your academic advisor, as long as you are within your major, within your school that you've been assigned to. So you would stay with Heather Mayorga, Amy Griggs, or myself, the 3 advisors in CGT, as long as you're in a CGT major. And so you'll get your advising appointment, and then you'll pick that date sometime through the month of June. And then we will work with you about courses that you need to take for fall semester, the proper courses that are going to be appropriate for you. A lot of them are going to be consistently the same ones, because We have a freshman core for our curriculums that's coming up, and so that will be implemented in the fall semester. So there's not a ton of wiggle room in terms of classes that you'll need to choose from, because we'll sort of guide you on that. I can say with a great deal of confidence that even though you had to take foreign language in high school to get admitted to Purdue, Bridget and Olivia will attest to the fact that you are not required to take foreign language once you get to Purdue and CGT. So that's always a bonus for a lot of people, that they're done with foreign language, but if you want to continue that, you can. Our students take 2 semesters of math minimally, a pre-calculus course and an applied calculus course. However, students will come to Purdue with advanced placement credit, which is AP credit for most of you, or you are taking a dual credit course in high school, which means you're taking a high school class that's also tied to credit at a state or local community college or university. And so we would want to know that information as soon as possible, or at least be aware of what you have, coursework that you've completed in high school, because that may alter the classes that you take your freshman year in the first semester that you're with us, because that could impact that. So I always tell students who are taking AP credit classes now to request that Purdue University get your test scores, that you take those tests in May or June, whenever you do that at your school. If you took AP classes your junior year in high school and did not indicate a university or school, you should go back to the College Board and request that those junior year test scores get sent to Purdue or to wherever you're planning on attending. So that's critical. And then if you're going to do dual credit at another institution, that college or university needs to have the transcript of your college credit sent to Purdue as well. And advisors can help you with that.
All right, excellent. Just kind of a follow, seen a lot of questions about double majoring or taking classes within another college within Purdue, and I think something that we know is a possibility as well, is double majoring within the department itself. So how does that work in terms of taking those classes and then the double majoring possibility within CGT?
Sure, certainly. Thank you for the cue, Ryan, there. Some majors within computer graphics are very friendly with each other, and so it's easily attainable to get 2 majors. I'll use the example of visual effects and animation, or data visualization and web development, and virtual product integration and web development are pretty common because there's a lot of crossover. UX does not have that luxury because of the way their courses are structured and the elective courses that are designed for those students to be successful. So it depends upon your major on whether you want to, on how easy it is to double up and do 2 majors within computer graphics. Now, anybody can do 2 majors if they want to, but then you're talking about time and money. So it's how much time do you want to spend at Purdue? And that would then trickle down to how much money do you want to spend at Purdue, because you're going to be here more than 4 years. And so that's going to be an impact on you. There are what I would call electives that all of our students take, which are non-computer graphics courses, so that you're being a well-rounded student at Purdue. And so those elective classes sometimes have a very restricted list of courses that you get to choose from, which are called selectives, or it's, an elective, which is anything from communications will count as an elective. So it's a very wide open opportunity there. So there is flexibility. The classes that Purdue teaches across other disciplines like computer science, engineering, management, those types of courses, sometimes those are very restrictive and you cannot take those classes because they're only reserved for those students in those programs. Much like our computer graphics classes, they're not allowed to anybody other than computer graphics majors, just because we don't have the room or the bandwidth to have more than just CGT majors in those courses. So we just don't have the ability to let other students in. So it kind of goes both ways when you're trying to get into a class outside of CGT and you can't get in. I always share the story, well, we don't let people into your classes in your major. So it's sort of an equity thing.
Gotcha. And then I have one last question before we shift gears again. And is there professional work experience or internship requirement as part of the CGT majors? And how does most of our students tend to accomplish that?
Certainly. So that professional experience comes all the way from the dean's office in our college. So Dean Bertolini several years ago wanted all of our students to have some sort of work experience prior to graduation. And so the door was pretty wide open on how students attain that ability to cross that off their list. Traditionally, some students would do a co-op. That's where you're working for the same company off and on throughout your academics, and you're pretty much on a 5-year track for that. A lot of our students in different majors will pick up an internship during the summertime to sort of get that box checked off for them. But our faculty have been very, I think, foreseeing in the future and how things work with students. And so it's not just restricted to those two entities. We have students who work on campus projects for other departments across campus, and they're web developers for another department. Or my favorite example is, before we had the work experience requirement, one of our students had an opportunity to create a new logo for their neighbor who was a dentist. So that student spent the entire summer creating a new logo and identity for the dentist's office. So that student had the letterhead and business cards, and the sign outside the dentist office was all done by that student. So a pretty big, impressive resume booster for them. So our faculty have said it can be anything that's related to computer graphics within your field. So that's kind of how that works.
Great, and I know we just a couple of weeks ago had a career fair for the CGT department. I don't know if you or any of our faculty members could maybe speak to some of the companies or industry partners that came and attended and met with our students. I think it's virtual, of course, but any information you want to share about that? Or anybody else want to jump in?
I don't have the names in front of me, Ryan, but I was the faculty lead for sort of organizing the career fair along with some of our staff within CGT this time. And this was our inaugural fair. I think we had 5 or 6 companies that joined virtually. And this is something that we're planning on continuing to offer at least annually and possibly each semester moving forward. So we're really excited to find some new ways to help students engage with potential employers for internships and for jobs.
All right, great. And then I want to turn to Bridget real quick, because she, I believe, has an internship coming up this summer. I want to just hear a little bit about that. What's that going to be all about for you?
Sure. So I'm really excited for the opportunity. I'm going to be working full time this summer as a UX designer for a company called Advanced XP. So I'm very excited about that. As far as how that will count towards my internship requirement, I will have to take a class simultaneously to kind of validate my work, to kind of show proof of work. And not only am I going to have to fill out a lot of materials, take this class simultaneously as I'm having my summer job, I am going to have to, my boss is going to have to fill out some materials basically to confirm that I've done all of that work. I probably couldn't explain the logistics perfectly to you. I don't know if Dr. Gray would be able to elaborate on that.
That's more in TR's lane, but we do have one of our professors, Professor Nancy Rashi, who's helping to manage our professional requirements. And there'll be some new web materials launching pretty soon to detail all the logistics around how you file for that credit and the things that you need to do to make sure that it's valid.
All right, great. And I know, beyond the one career fair that we had just a couple weeks ago for this department, there's a Polytechnic-wide career fair every year. There are different career fairs and company information sessions happening across campus. In addition to that, our Center for Career Opportunities helps all of our students with writing resumes and doing some mock interviews with them, and having a list of internships and opportunities to get connected to industry partners as well. So there's a lot of support from faculty advisors and different departments on campus to get you into those different experiences. And we've seen a bunch of different questions about computer recommendations, or software that might need to be purchased or maybe not. And I think we'll just kind of run through our faculty again, Colin and Ray and Rosemary and Vittoria in that order. Do you have any recommendations where and how to buy and what our students should look for?
So we operate in a studio space where there are not one-to-one computers. So we would strongly recommend some sort of laptop that has good battery life. Our program is focused around group work, and so it doesn't matter that the laptop is super high powered. It matters that you're comfortable with it and that you can get work done on it. Most of the software that's used is prototyping software that's relatively lightweight in terms of GPU and CPU power, but the portability is probably a key factor. PCs or Macs, either one are fine. There's a lot of different kinds of software out there. Some of it is Mac only. Industry does tend to skew a little bit more Mac, but it's really what you're going to be comfortable with using.
So for data viz, I will say I will recommend that you get as much memory as you can because you will be working with large data sets, and as much RAM that you have available, that's going to be helpful. Also, the largest hard drive that you could get would be helpful as well. In terms of the software, all the software that we primarily use is open source. So you should not have to purchase anything, even with Tableau. What I do, because we do use that in 270, I get licenses for each student to use Tableau in the class for the semester, but that license lasts for an entire year and also for your time, as long as you're a student. And so once you get that initial license, after you complete the class, all you have to do is to send an email from your Purdue email address to Tableau and say, hey, I'm still a student. I want to continue to use this, and they will give you full access to the software. So you won't have to purchase any software other than for data viz, other than just having some type of software like Word or something that will allow you to type up, projects and things of that nature.
So I guess it's my turn, right? I would advise students for animation, gaming, VFX, compositing, any of those disciplines. I would just say stay away from Mac products. The software, it's designed for PC first, and anything else is a port. So yeah, I would say get a PC, NVIDIA graphics card. The reason why is because of it'll support the OpenGL applications as well as the DirectX applications. I would say, yeah, big hard drive. Some of the files can get really big. Definitely lots of RAM. If you can get a video card with a lot of onboard video RAM, that would be the best way to go. Definitely PC. Oh, can I add one more thing? It's not a bad idea to consider getting a tablet or even a tablet PC if you're going the laptop route, something that you can draw directly onto the screen. Some people actually don't prefer that. Some people prefer to have a little side tablet, but one of those as well is super helpful.
Okay, and I will echo a lot of what Ray said. I'm trying to think. I think all of the software that we use is Windows only. And I hate saying that because I'm a big Mac fan. But that said, you can remote into the labs and use the software still from your Mac. So, it's not to say that you can't have a Mac. And again, a lot of the software we use is very expensive. Some of it can be $20,000 a seat in industry. So you're probably not going to purchase most of the tools. Some of them require specific setups. So again, our labs are set up to handle all of those installations and configurations. And again, my students, a lot of them remote into the lab. Of course, because of COVID, I actually don't live on campus, so I teach remotely anyway. The students like having the option of being at home if they want to and remoting in. They can always go to the lab as well. So I guess for most of your work, word processor, all that sort of stuff, web browser, probably the most important thing is a good internet connection, which I know you probably can't control. But yeah, and I also think maybe someone else in the department can confirm, I thought we were putting together a spreadsheet maybe of like an optimal configuration. And I don't know if we've published that, but maybe that's something we could get and post after the broadcast here, because we're all trying to, collaborate and figure out what is there an optimal configuration for students.
I'm going to jump in here if that's okay, Ryan. So as a holistic approach to all this, I would recommend that if you're going to buy a brand new machine, some things, and maybe Olivia and Bridget can attest to this, but if you're going to buy a PC Windows-based machine, and I'll just pick Best Buy, not that you have to go there, so don't say that TR said Best Buy is a place to go, but if you do, you can buy the machine, and then when you get to Purdue and you are a Purdue student this summer, once you get your ID and you're registered for classes, you can download Office 365 for free onto your machine. And then Purdue has a reduced rate on some of the software tools through our information technology at Purdue, or ITAP is what it's called. And you can buy some of that software at a reduced rate as a student version. So that's also helpful for you. And I think, Rosemary, you hit it as well. I think everybody wants wireless around here, but there are 42,000 students on campus. So if there's any way you can wire into the network, it's much more stable and faster than it would be to try to do Wi-Fi from wherever you're living.
All right, awesome. Thank you. And to just kind of summarize, I think once you get to the point where you're talking with your academic advisor during Virtual STAR, that might be a good time to ask, for my major, what do you recommend? Is there something that I can still look into or adjust based on either a new machine or what you currently have? And I think that's probably the best resource when you get to that point of Virtual STAR. And then TR, we're actually going to stick with you real quick and just to see, is there a senior capstone requirement for different majors? And if any of our faculty members are involved with that process within your area, and I'll come back to you after we hear from TR as well.
Certainly. So again, coming from the dean's office, we used to have a one-semester capstone experience in CGT, but the dean has recommended it be a full year, so our curriculum reflects that. And so we're in our second year of that model where all of our students will come into this freshman core classes, and they'll take these core classes their first year here. So you're all going to be taking very similar classes in computer graphics together. And then your sophomore year, you're all going to sort of deviate into your major fields and your major classes, and you may not interact with a visual effects major if you're in UX ever again. But then you come back into your senior year, and we have a capstone experience where it starts in the fall semester. All of our seniors from all of our majors are in the same classroom, and then we have projects that are either presented by students themselves, they're presented by faculty in our department or across campus. They could be from alumni or it could be from industry, where those projects are proposed to students to take on. And then students sort of pick the project that they want to work on. And there's usually teams of 3 to 5 students on these projects. And then you spend the remainder of the fall semester doing research on that project that you're going to be working on. You work with a faculty advisor, you work with a corporate sponsor for your project. And so you sort of do some of the front legwork in the fall semester. In the spring semester, your group moves to January and your team stays together in the second semester of that capstone experience. And then you start producing a product that will be presented to faculty and staff and students and the public, for all that matters, whoever wants to come to these presentations, and you present your solutions and your data and your research that you had on that project. And so that's my favorite time of the year, is to watch these student projects come to fruition.
All right, great. And one other thing I want to bring up is opportunities for undergraduate research. And Colin and Vittoria, I want to start with you. And I think, Colin, you mentioned you're very heavily involved with that. So what does that look like? What kind of opportunities do our undergraduate students have to get involved with research?
Yeah, and both Vittoria and I have done a lot of work with undergraduate research at Purdue. There's a huge amount of support for undergraduate research. Know that you're coming to a research-intensive institution where there are lots of incentives to get involved with research. So at any given time, there are 3 or 4 different programs that undergraduate students can apply through to get funding during the year or during the summer to do research with a Purdue faculty member. It doesn't have to be a faculty member in CGT either. And so actually some of the mechanisms like the DURI program, the Discovery Park Undergraduate Research Initiative, not only gives you a bit of a stipend, but it allows you to apply for interdisciplinary projects all across campus. So we've had students do work in psychology labs. I have normally 4 or 5 students in any given semester working in my lab as well. They get trained in research. Many of them go on to graduate school, and a lot of them have gotten publications as well to them. And I know Vitria has done a lot of very much the same thing.
Yes, absolutely. So I want to echo everything that Colin has said because we both work with a lot of undergraduates. I want to mention also there are other opportunities like the Our Scholars Program, which is funded through, I think, the provost. So undergraduates can just take a look and see what faculty are doing in their labs and just approach them and say, hey, I'm interested in the work that you're doing. So it doesn't necessarily have to be a faculty in CGT, but there's certainly an opportunity for that. And what you do is you would commit for 2 semesters, and I believe the students get $500 per semester as a scholarship. That's just for being accepted. So it's very competitive, but if you can get into it, it's a great opportunity to do that as well. You can do research in the classes that you're in. I used to have students participate in the Undergraduate Research Symposium. So there are 2. One in the fall and one in the spring. There's opportunities to win money, to place first, second, or third place. There are poster presentations as well as oral presentations that you give. Sometimes students, I have one student that came to me this semester that says he wants to continue doing research with me, but he doesn't want to get paid. He wants to do it for research credits, so that's an option. It's not required, but it's definitely an option. So if you do come to Purdue and you walk around in Kenoi, 3rd floor, you'll see some of the posters on the walls displaying some of the research that students have done and have participated in the Undergraduate Research Symposium. Several of them have won awards. So there's lots of opportunities to do that. In my class, I do encourage students to do a research experience. Not so much if you're not interested in research, you may say, I don't want to do research for the rest of my life. That's okay. But what you want to do is to get that experience because you will show potential employers that you know how to take a concept from beginning to actually walking it through that entire process and generating something. So last summer, I had 3 students to actually become first authors on conference papers, and had COVID not hit, we were actually planning to go to Sweden. I had actually secured some money, some funding to take them, and they were so excited, and I was too, to take them to actually present their work. And so it's lots of opportunities for research, and I do encourage each of you to consider doing a research experience as a part of your undergraduate experience.
All right, thank you both, Colin and Vitria. That's really good to hear that there's different opportunities like that to get more in depth into the different field. We've seen some different questions come in about our game development and design major, and Ray, we'll start with you. And one of the questions was about the ability to code or create a game start to finish. What does that look like? What are the students really learning in that area?
It depends upon what game engine, or if you're building a game engine from scratch. The job of coding a game can be extraordinarily difficult, but it doesn't have to be. There are existing game engines. You don't have to start everything from scratch, and you can get through. You can probably create a very basic game within the space of, like, as a beginner, within the space of a couple weeks, using a Unity tutorial or an Unreal tutorial. And to be perfectly honest, you don't need to wait until you come to Purdue. You can get your feet wet with that right now. Those game engines for students are not terribly expensive, and I think that Unreal is actually free for students, so you could theoretically even do it before you come here. There's enough material out there roaming around the internet that you could get enough to build a basic game. It just depends upon the complexity, but definitely the students who finish the game development program, they can do it. They can make a game. They can even make a fairly complicated game. But typically they would be building on an existing game engine and not designing or building a game engine from scratch, which would be more of that's kind of more of like a computer science, like really high level programming.
Sure, that makes sense. And TR kind of related to that, for game development, industry connections, how do we get our students into that area once they're done with there?
So again, we had our first entertainment career fair this year with 5 to 6 companies that came, and so we're hoping to build off of that. We do have some game companies that do seek out our graduates, so they come to Purdue asking, but a lot of times it's really the legwork of the students to try to find that best fit for them on what they're doing in terms of games. And our faculty will talk about this, and I try to emphasize that as well about, you know, sometimes the traditional game industry can be very competitive. And so it's hard to get that job, but I always talk about, you know, think outside the box. Think about what in the world needs assistance with maybe something that would involve a game. And I use our example, one of our senior capstone, so this kind of plays into a previous question about the capstone experience. One of our recent capstone groups, the School of Nursing had come to our department for assistance. And you're like, what does nursing have to do with gaming? That seems kind of weird. So our School of Nursing is very well known and has a lot of graduates that go on for great careers, but they have a lab within their building that is a mock-up of a hospital room. And so these students have to go into this lab and sort of put the room together in terms of what goes where and what's missing and how do you replenish this and how do you put, you know, the patient and how do you do certain things and with all the equipment that's in there. And it's a $250,000 to $500,000 room to maintain every single year. And so the faculty were trying to, and then students have to sign up for a time to get into this room, and they may only get in there once or twice when they really want to go 3 or 4 times to sort of practice, and they just don't have the time and the space with all their students. So they came to us, CGT, and said, what can you do for us? And so we had building information modeling students, we had animation students, we had gaming students who created a virtual reality game for these nursing students to go into a virtual hospital room and do those exact same processes that they would have done in the classroom. And the faculty in nursing were just thrilled with what the students had put together. And so they said, we can use this at Purdue, but we could also do remote teaching. We could send VR goggles to Africa, and we could have a hospital there training nurses to do certain things as long as they have internet connection. So they just saw tremendous possibilities with this. So I think if students can find a different kind of niche where games would be appropriate, or as I call it, gamification would be appropriate in all kinds of fields, I think they could be extremely successful as opposed to maybe the competitive traditional games that people are used to playing.
Ryne, can I add something to that? So I'd also like to point out that for Data Viz, we get a lot of projects through TR. You know, companies and people will contact him and say we have these data needs, and he has forwarded them on to the faculty, and so that gives students an opportunity to work with real world data as well.
All right, very good. Appreciate that. We're going to turn it back to our students just to hear a little bit more about their student life experience, kind of what they're involved in. And they're both Polytechnic student ambassadors that kind of help us out with different events like this. But Olivia, I want to hear from you, and then we'll turn it over to Bridget. What are the different student organizations that you've been involved in, or different activities you participate in on campus, if they're related to your major or the department, or things outside of that as well? Just kind of give our viewers a little taste of what Purdue has to offer.
Sure. One organization that is related to my major is Women in Animation, which is really good at networking with upperclassmen. They do a lot of demos or like even just portfolio reviews or connecting with other women in the industry. And then it's just some fun stuff I'm in Greek life, and I'm also in Scuba Club, which I had no idea how to scuba before I came here. So yeah, there's something for everybody.
Yeah, so I'm involved in a handful of student organizations on campus. So I am an ambassador for the Polytechnic Institute, which consists of doing events like this. Um, I am also involved in Women in Technology. I'm on the board, which is a gender inclusive student organization dedicated towards the success of women in technology. We do a lot of professional development opportunities, having alumni come in and speak to our club members. We're also involved with our another club called Witty Sisters, which is kind of like a mentoring program. Um, we also have a learning community and a class associated with it. So it's multiple ways that you could get involved with women in technology, but it's a really great organization that I'm so proud to be a part of. A little on the fun side, I do improv comedy. So I'm in the Crazy Monkeys improv comedy. We've got a show on Friday. But I've had a lot of opportunity to work on professional development with stuff like women in technology and being a student ambassador, but it's also all about the fun and the community. And of course, I'm also a member of the Purdue User Experience Design Club, which is a whole lot of fun as well.
All right, excellent, very cool. And I'm going to stick with our students here.
Yeah, so once I finish my degree here, I'm actually going to be finishing up another degree. I'm a double major, so I'll be here for quite some time. But I am hoping to focus in on I am only a sophomore, so I'm going to be focusing in a couple of areas. We'll see. I'm hopefully going to be in the space of user research or project management. That's something I have to decide, but I'm hoping to be, by the time I leave Purdue, gainfully employed and on my way towards one of those goals.
This could change as I go through the program, just as I get my feet wet into different things. But right now I'm really interested in post-production, compositing especially. Yeah, and I mean, the dream is to work for Disney or Lucasfilm or things like that. But my interest could change. So.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. I changed my major a couple of times, and yeah, that's how where I ended up. So I'm happy where I am. But anyway, now I want to turn it back to the faculty, just to, kind of on that same line of what are some of the maybe career titles or companies that you've seen our graduates move on to once they finish their degree? And Colin, we'll start with you.
Oh gosh, this is a hard one. UX comes in many, many flavors and forms. It's an enigma. So UX is often in the title. Sometimes you'll see user experience researcher, user experience designer. If it's a more engineering tech focused company, sometimes you'll see these called UX engineers as well. One of our first graduates, Abby, that you mentioned earlier in relation to the podcast, her title is a UX engineer. Increasingly, UX is overlapping with product management. So this is really the intersection of user concerns and business concerns. And then, of course, there are these flavors that are focusing primarily on user research, like what Bridget just mentioned, or roles that might be focused more on evaluation, so like a usability engineer. So a very wide range of job titles in basically any industry you can imagine.
All right, and Vitria for data viz.
Yes, so there's a wide range of different possibilities here, but the most thing that I see is data visualization scientist or data science. And so you'll find that data visualization is a key component. I like to think it's the glue that hold all of those different disciplines that go into data science together. But if you have some inclination to do programming, there could be programming for data visualization. There's also research. And so I think if you do a Google search for, like I said, data visualization scientists, most of the things that you will see will be related to possibly data science or in that realm.
All right, I think that makes sense. Thank you. And then Ray, for you.
So what I see a lot is the job title technical director. A lot of students get hired directly into the technical director position, even though in most studios that's actually considered a sort of a higher up and definitely harder than most positions to fill. But I do see quite a lot of that. I see there are some animators, there are some modelers, there are some texture artists, there are matte painters, matte painting technical directors, riggers, just about, I mean, any discipline you can imagine for 3D animation. Now, for games is a little bit different. I'm going to answer for them, because they're not here. They're they make technical directors too, but there's a difference. There's a little bit of a difference as to what the role of a games technical director would be versus an animation technical director. It's a pretty broad category, but we do tend to see a lot of that. And what it takes to get that job is a solid understanding of the pipeline for the production of animation or video games, and a solid understanding of the tools used, and the ability to write, or script really little plugins for those tools. So on the animation side, that's what you would be doing. And on the game side, a technical director might be, sometimes they'll use that term for somebody who's doing rigging, which is, I guess, we would just call it something different in the animation industry. So, but the skills involved are mostly, as far as the skills that they're using on their job title, it's they have to have a good understanding of the pipeline. For the technical director, they need a little bit of programming, so you would want to have that Python experience for sure, and they would have a portfolio built up that would demonstrate their abilities in those areas. Even for programming, it could just be like a screen share of how a tool works that you've built for Maya, for example. And for 3D modeling, rigging, there's so many different disciplines here. It would be hard to explain them all, and they probably sound fairly esoteric without the explanation, but it's in layman's terms, building the geometry. Texturing or digital matte painting is painting in the background or painting on the texture on the object. Rigging is setting up the bones and structure to make a character move, and animating is actually making the character move. Compositing is layering video. We do that a lot in animation. So yeah, those are, I guess, more of the layman's terms for the job titles that I see. But there's a lot, and they don't all always go into industry. The skills that they learn, I think they're very applicable in a lot of different areas. I get students come out of animation, end up, for example, doing web programming, because they learn it here and they end up with a good job, and they're still using some of their artistic skills, their design skills. They might even still be using some of the same software skills, but in a slightly different industry, because it's not all the big studios. It's there's a lot more jobs out there than just that.
All right, thank you, Ray. But that's good to hear that there's a lot of different directions that students can go into from these areas. Cool. And then Rosemary, for your VPI area.
Yeah, VPI really isn't that much different, because you can go in a lot of directions with it as well. Of course, a design engineer is kind of the most obvious, but really any company that makes a thing, a physical thing that you can hold, you could work for. So you could work as an application engineer. You might even work on the systems that pass the data from design to manufacture. So anything involved with the moving of that data virtually, or moving the virtual data, I guess is a better way to put it. You might even become like a trainer. I have industry colleagues that focus on training other people how to apply and define the data correctly. And I mean, there's a lot of big name companies, you know, Boeing and Lockheed in the aerospace area. Of course, Rolls-Royce is just down the road a bit in Indianapolis. Caterpillar is another obvious close one. Automotive, Ford and Tesla, Subaru again is down the street, and Cessna is another one I hear a lot of students going to. But there's smaller companies too, right? Those are all pretty big names, but I know Allison Transmission, we have some good connections. They're just outside of the Speedway down in Indianapolis. So there's a whole lot of opportunity, and we have a really good placement is the other important, that about 80% of our graduates have a job by the time they've graduated. So that's another important thing to consider, that we are able to give you the skills. And I think, like somebody said, maybe it was Ray or Vitria, that a lot of times they come to us looking for graduates. So our grads maybe don't have to go out and look so hard. We already have some opportunities. And I know personally, I connect with my students on LinkedIn, and I've had some connections made that way as well. So we, you know, we all want you to succeed, and I think any of us would do whatever it would take to help make that happen.
All right, excellent, thank you. And we always like to wrap up these panel discussions with a question for all of our panelists to go through. You know, what's some piece of advice that you would give to the admitted students and those who've accepted and want to come here to this department? What is a piece of advice to be successful in this department? And Colin, we'll start with you.
Yeah, so I teach a freshman design class. And so one of the things that people want to do is they want to come in and do the thing right and perfect the first time. And so lower the expectation, lower the bar, know that you're in a safe space to fail and to try new things and then to learn from those mistakes. We put a lot of energy in trying to create a safe space to learn. And so come and be willing to take some of those risks along with us.
All right, very good. Next up, Bridget.
Yeah, so my biggest piece of advice would be to be kind to yourself. Like, one of the best ways to do that as a student is to ask for help. So as Dr. Gray said, you'll struggle, you'll fail. That's all a very, very important part of learning, especially in UX design, but you do have the resources to make that experience less terrible. It's easier said than done, but take advantage of your office hours, talk to your TAs, create study groups and emails. Being lost doesn't make you a bad student. That's one thing Dr. Gray has told me specifically. So yeah, be kind to yourself and ask for help.
Yeah, and I think that's a great point. Something that we haven't mentioned yet before is there's several different support resources within the Polytechnic and outside of it, the rest of the university. We have what's called BEST, Building Excellence for Students in Technology. Academic coaches who are students work with you on any struggling issues that you might have with concepts. We have some mentoring programs and tutoring programs for math and physics, as well as the Academic Success Center here on campus with supplemental instruction for some of the larger university classes that we have students who help out and give some different sessions on and additional help as well. So, and like Bridget mentioned, ask for help. Go find those resources with whether it's your advisor or your faculty member. They're going to help support you with that process. Okay, next up, we'll turn it over to Rosemary.
Yeah, I agree with everything that's been said. There are a lot of resources, and it's really all about you get out of it what you put into it. So again, have an open mind. Nothing is perfect. I teach manufacturing. Everything has a little tolerance. Everything has little imperfections in some way, and people are no different. But again, we're here to support you with that. And I think the other thing, I went to a relatively large university, so some students might be looking at smaller schools, and I would say don't be scared of that or intimidated by a large university, because we have all of a huge amount of resources, but also once you get into your major, you'll find your little group of people, right? My school had 25,000, but I graduated with 30. So you'll be within your department, you know, is intimate. So that's a great thing about Purdue and coming to this department, is that you get the best of both worlds.
No, I think that's a good point. There's the good community feel here within the college overall. So very
For
nice.
sure.
Next up, Olivia.
One thing, at least for me, I was very afraid to reach out for help because I felt like I could just do it all. But every time I did ask for help, I always had positive response, whether it was from a teaching assistant or a professor. My professor even helped me land an internship. Like they're here to help you and they want to see you succeed, whether it's giving you feedback or connecting you to opportunities.
All right, very good. Thank you. Next up, Ray.
Okay, I've got a lot to say. I'd throw out another reminder about PC over Mac for my major, animation. It's imperative that you get the PC. I strongly recommend building your own from scratch. More bang for the buck. And another thing, when you do come here, because obviously you probably will. When you do come here, be ready to work. All right. We're a serious school, and I'm gonna tell you, making cartoons and games is serious work. I think that's it.
All right, thank you. Next up, TR.
I would probably say that this is not high school by far. Many of you probably don't study very much. I have a 16-year-old daughter who I just am shocked at how much time she does not study, but still is successful in her academics. And that is not what college is like at all. So understanding that you're going to have to buckle down and set time aside to learn content outside of class. In high school, the teacher teaches at you and pretty much teaches you to the textbook and teaches you to the test. In college, it's completely different. So you may talk about something in class and you have something in your textbook and everything was on something in the textbook that you never covered in class. So it's really, or vice versa. So you really need to be prepared to learn how to study, I think, is an important part. And again, emphasizing that fact that you're not going to get the easy A. And so there are some students who have got straight A's in high school and they just expect that it's just going to flow into college. And I'll tell you, I have some outstanding students who have struggled year in and year out, who have just not been able to get the idea of studying down until it's too late for the fall semester. And then you end up with, your first C or your first D, or you failed a class. And it's like, oh my gosh, my world's over. No, it's not. You just need to do something different the next semester and you can still be successful. So I've seen those students falter and then they move on to be successful people in their career path. So just knowing this is not high school and learning how to study.
All right, thanks, TR. And last but not least, Vittoria.
So I think pretty much everything has been said. So I just have a couple of things to add. One of which, and I say this to my students all the time, is that you are making an investment in your future. And so it is in your best interest that you take initiative, get involved, and ask questions. So for myself, if students don't ask questions, then I assume either I'm doing a fantastic job or you understand everything that I say. So that is not always the case. And so I want to encourage you, and sometimes it can be a little bit intimidating to ask a question in class, but just remember, if you're confused about something, then chances are someone else in the class is confused as well. And so when, faculty open the floor and say, are there any questions? We really do want you to ask those questions, and it leads to some dynamic exchanges. And it helps us to know, what do we need to go over again, just by those questions. So don't be afraid or intimidated by having a question, or remember, there's no such thing as a stupid question. Ask questions. One of the things that I do in my class for students who are currently enrolled, at the end of the semester, I ask them to write a letter to the incoming students and tell them what they need to do in order to be successful from the student's perspective in the class. And then I share those letters with the next group coming in. And so that kind of gives the student a perspective from the student's perspective, as well as from what my expectations are in the class. So I would say, again, you're making an investment in your future. Take the initiative, get involved, because college is a lot of work, but you should also have some fun as well. Self-care is very important, and ask questions.
All right, thank you, Vittoria, and thank you everyone for the great advice for our incoming students. So that does wrap up our discussion tonight. So thank you again to our viewers at home for joining us. I hope we got some good information and insight into our CGT department here. Thank you to our awesome panelists for, again, sharing their experiences and insights to everything. And thank you for John, our technical director behind the scenes, working on all those graphics and answering questions for you as well. So as I mentioned before, and John has said it in the chat as well, please email us if you have any other questions that we didn't get to tonight, techrecruit@purdue.edu, and we'll follow up with you there. But if you haven't joined us for one of our admitted student information sessions or student-to-student chats, we still have several of those coming up. So go to our admitted student page and you can find all of those opportunities to engage with us more directly and see a little bit different information as well. We also have a student life focused broadcast coming up on April 13th. So we'll have a great student panel answering questions about just overall student experience, academics, student life, what it's like to be a student here at the university. So hopefully you will join us for that. And then you can also watch this broadcast again by going to polytechnic.purdue.edu/live. There's all of our broadcasts that we've done over the last few years. So several different CGT related broadcasts as well. So you can take a look at those and see what other topics were discussed in those. And then just a quick reminder, your deadline to accept your offer of admission is coming up May 1st. So just about a month and a half from now. So thank you again for joining us. Have a great rest of your night, and boiler up.